years to come back in Israel. But would you give a warm victory welcome to Rabbi Pesach as he comes to minister tonight?
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. It's great to be back here. Raise your hand if you've heard me speak here before. I just want to see how familiar. Oh, a lot of people. Good. And if you're here for the first time and you're like, what kind of church should I just walk into? There's a Jewish rabbi here speaking. Just come back next week. Everything will be right back to normal, and we can just pretend this never happened. So Pastor Michael asked me to just share a little bit about what we do. CJCUC, the Center for Jewish-Christian, Jewish-Christian or Jewish and Christian, however you want to say it. The Center for Jewish-Christian Understanding and Cooperation, based in Israel, is an organization that is a Jewish organization, a rabbinic organization that is devoted to building stronger relationships, better relationships with Christians, with Christians all over the world. We also have a side project which is supported by this church called Blessing Bethlehem, where we support the evangelical Christian community in Bethlehem. I see you're nodding. You're aware of that program. You guys have been supporting it for years, and thank you for that. But our real goal as an organization, and my personal goal as someone who has really felt called by God into this place, is to connect around all that we share. And there are certainly differences between us, and we're not ignoring those differences, but we're not focusing on them. Certainly, we could talk about those differences, but I was saying to the pastors earlier, if I come home at the end of one of my trips abroad or at the end of the day and my wife says to me, honey, we need to talk about our relationship, then I'm kind of worried. It's going to be a rough evening. Because when things are good, you don't talk about the relationship, you just live in the relationship. And so I didn't come here tonight to talk about our relationship. I came here tonight to live in the relationship. And for all of the mystery and for all of the things that are different between us, our relationship centers around God, the God of the Bible, the God of Israel. And if we take that a little deeper, to all the things that emerge from that, to the values that emerge from that, the shared battles that we're fighting in the world, and everything that it means to live a life according to the Bible. So that's what we do. On a practical level, before COVID and after COVID, if there ever is an after COVID, I guess it has to. It has to make sense to someone for it to end. That's another topic. What we do, so we conduct Bible studies in Israel for groups that come to visit, to expose them to Jewish teaching and to just build those relationships, which is where I met Pastor Doug and Pastor Michael, as he mentioned, about 6 years ago, a little less than 6 years ago in Efrat. They came on a trip to Israel with Bishop Robert Stearns, and I was a guest speaker one day. They brought them to our center, and I conducted a Bible study. And in fact, Pastor Michael asked me, when we were talking about what topic to deal with tonight, he asked me to do the Bible study that we did 6 years ago when we first met. So I don't like speaking to anyone and saying the same thing they've already heard. So even though almost everyone in the room, except for Pastor Doug and Pastor Michael, have not heard this Bible study, I was thinking about Pastor Michael and Pastor Doug and saying, okay, they're going to be in the room tonight. I don't want them to just hear the same Bible study that they heard 6 years ago. So I added some components to it. So it's going to be that Bible study from 6 years ago plus a few other things are going to be thrown in there. But that's what we do. We conduct Bible studies. We produce media content that relates to Jewish-Christian relations. A few months ago, Pastor Doug Reed and myself launched a podcast called Shoulder to Shoulder, based on the verse in Zephaniah that describes some time in the future, some distant time in the future, when the people of Israel will return to their homeland, and the nations of the world will all join Israel in serving God and calling out the name of the God of Israel together. And the language used by the prophet there is that we will do it as one shoulder, or usually translated as shoulder to shoulder. So we launched a podcast where we discuss issues of shared concern of peoples of faith, to people of faith. And sometimes we'll discuss a political issue. Sometimes we'll discuss a scriptural issue, or just issues that matter to Christians and Jews alike. And we bring in guests. So if you don't have enough podcasts in your podcast listening during the week, please help us out by subscribing and downloading. Even if you never listen to it, it'll help us. But no, seriously. So Pastor Doug and I, we do this weekly podcast called Shoulder to Shoulder. So mark that down. And I love the sound of my own voice. So I just listened to it on repeat. But that's an example of the kind of work that we believe in at CJCUC, which is really bringing us closer together and having that conversation, having the types of conversations that I have with Pastor Doug on the podcast every week is what we're really all about. It's really about connecting and discovering points of shared interest, discovering deeper aspects of our differences, but most of all, standing shoulder to shoulder in a world where there's a lot of people who are on the other side, and we share biblical values, and we share biblical faith. We share faith in the God of Israel, and one day, when the temple in Jerusalem is rebuilt, as Isaiah said, it will be a house of prayer for all nations, and that means that we're going to be worshiping there together. That's what it's all about. Have I said enough about CJCUC? Wonderful, thank you. And right, and I have, I'll say before I even start, I have a stack of my business cards here. And I don't just give out business cards to someone I want to have a meeting with. I printed up a lot of them, so whenever I go speaking, I would love for each and every one of you to take one of these, and that way we can be in contact. You can have, if you ever have a question, they're like, I would like to ask a rabbi this question, or you're reading the Bible and you want to know what it says in the Hebrew, or you just have a question about Israel, or you just want to be in touch. So please take one of these business cards with you. Let it be the beginning of our relationship. Okay, so the stack here, I don't know where you want to put them, Pastor, where everyone can have them. But let's be in touch. Are we ready to study? Can we study the Bible? Okay, so we are going to be looking at Genesis chapter 33. Now, what I really want to talk about is something that the pastor referred to before. He mentioned that you have a couple Wednesdays coming up that there won't be church because he wants you to be spending time with your family. And we're going to be talking about the importance of family. Now, that's a very nice topic. Not very controversial, importance of family. But we're going to be talking about the importance of family when we're in a society, when we encounter a society that sometimes makes family values challenging. And how do we deal with that? And there's a lot of different passages I could have chosen in the Bible to talk about family, and I chose a passage that on the face of it doesn't seem to be about family at all, and it certainly doesn't seem to be about a healthy family. It's Genesis chapter 33. Genesis chapter 33 is the scene where Jacob, after being away from the land of Israel for many years, is on his way back. And when he ran away after having colluded with his mother to trick his father Isaac to get the blessings, because his father Isaac did not know that he had acquired the birthright. That Esau had given up the right to the blessings of the firstborn, but Isaac never knew that. So they were rightly Jacob's. So they devised this whole plan. You know the story, right? Jacob had to flee because Esau wanted to kill him. And he ran away from home, went to his uncle Laban's house, got married multiple times, had a whole slew of kids, and it's now many years later. It's about 22 years later, and he's on his way home. And he finds out that Esau, his brother who wanted to kill him, the Bible says so, is coming to greet him with an army of 400 men. And he's terrified. He divides up his family into 2 camps and says that the reason he's dividing them, he tells them, imagine you're one of Jacob's kids. And he says, okay, we're dividing up, you there, you there, you there. We're dividing up into 2 camps, just in case Esau comes and attacks us. If he attacks one of the camps and slaughters half the family, the other half could survive. This is terrifying. And he prays, and in the middle of the night, and he has this encounter with an angel who battles with him, and he's obviously being tormented by this, and he calls out to God. There's this prayer that he cries out to God to save him from his brother Esau. There's a lot of build-up to the scene, and Genesis 33 is finally the scene where Jacob and Esau meet. You know, one of our problems when we read the Bible is that we know the stories. So it's almost impossible, unless you're a real newcomer to faith, to actually just open up the Bible and read it without any idea of what's going to happen next. But if you were reading this story and you didn't know how it ended, there's a lot of buildup, there's a lot of tension. I mean, look at what Jacob is doing. His brother vowed to kill him. He's coming after him with an army. He's dividing up the family into 2 camps. He's praying to God, save me, please, from my brother, from Esau, so that he doesn't slaughter my wives and children. And finally, this scene comes. So let's have Genesis 33. We're going to go through what we're going to do. We're first going to read through the entire chapter. Can we put it up there? I mean, we're not going to have the whole chapter on the screen. Now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming. And with him were 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants. Keep going. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, and Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Benjamin wasn't born yet. Keep going. Then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times. He's trying to appease him until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes and saw the women and children. This is Esau lifted his eyes and saw the women and children and said, "Who are these with you?" So he said, "These are the children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maidservants came near, and they and their children bowed down. And Leah also came near with her children. They bowed down. Afterwards, Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed down. Then Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company which I met?" And what he's referring to is Jacob had sent ahead some of his servants with a whole bunch of sheep and cattle, and it was a gift that he was sending to his brother. And Esau had already encountered that gift before he finally reaches the camp. And he said, "These are to find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother." Okay, okay. We have a problem with the translation. Translation alert. We'll get to that in a moment. The word enough is not what it says in Hebrew. It actually says, "I have a lot, my brother," in Hebrew. If you look at different, does anyone have other translations in front of you? You might see that in your translation. It says enough. Okay. The Hebrew is yesh li rav. Rav means a lot, right? Rav means a lot. That's the literal Hebrew. Yesh, plenty. Plenty is a good, yeah, that's what the word means. Yesh li rav. Yesh li means I have, rav, a lot, plenty. That's what Esau says. I have plenty, and that matters. Keep that in your mind. That's going to come up in a few minutes. These are to find favor in the sight of my Lord. Esau said, "I have plenty, my brother." I should have picked a translation, right? But then we wouldn't have had this great moment. "Keep what you have for yourself." Keep going. And Jacob said, "No, please. If I have now found favor in your sight, receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face as though I had seen the face of God." He's giving tremendous honor to his brother. "And you were pleased with me. Please take my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Okay, that's also a bad translation. He does not say because I have enough. He says because I have everything. You have that in your translation? Good. The Hebrew is yesh li kol. I have everything. So let's I'm not going to teach you Hebrew tonight, but I'm going to teach you a couple words. Yesh li means I have. Okay? Yesh li, I have. Yesh means have, and li means I, to me. There is to me. Yesh li, I have. Anyone here speak Russian? No? Okay, because in Russian it's a better translation. Okay. Yesh li, I have, and then Esau said, I have plenty. Rav, yesh li rav. Jacob says, yesh li kol, I have everything. Is my moving around messing it up for the people at home? Okay, fine. Okay, so keep that in mind. So Jacob says, no, please take the blessing I brought to you. God has dealt graciously with me. I have everything. Some English translations say, I have everything I need. He doesn't say that. He says, I have everything. So he urged him and he took it. Then Esau said, let us take our journey. Let's go. I'll go before you. Let's travel together. Jacob said to him, no, my Lord knows. He doesn't mean God. He means Esau. My Lord knows that the children are weak. The flocks and the herds are nursing with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, the flock will die. Basically, you don't want to travel with us. We go real slow. Please let my Lord go on ahead before his servant. I'll lead on slowly at a pace with the livestock that will go before me. And the children are able to endure until I come to my Lord in Seir. I'll come visit you at some point in the future. Not really. And Esau said, now let me leave you with some of the people who are with me. Okay, fine. So maybe, you don't want to travel together. Maybe I could just leave some of my attendants, some of my servants. They could help you out. But he said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of the Lord. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. And Jacob journeyed to Sukkoth, built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, okay, this is also a bit of a bad translation. Actually, it doesn't say therefore the name of the place is called. It says therefore he called the name of the place Sukkot. Jacob named the place Sukkot. Jacob came to Canaan. Well, Jacob comes to Canaan is probably the title in your translation, where in the Christian translations they put titles to the sections. That's not part of the verse. Then Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. When he came from Padan Aram, which is where Laban lived, that's where he's coming from, and he pitched his tent before the city. And he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohei Yisrael. End of chapter, right? Okay. Now, this is a bit of a letdown after all the buildup, isn't it? Think of what just happened here. I said to you before to picture that you are one of Jacob's kids. You've never met Uncle Esau. You've heard stories. You see your father praying, preparing, worried, dividing the family in two. And you just imagine that this is some kind of violent monster. You've heard of him. Your dad is shaking in his boots. You're looking at the half of the family in the other camp, wondering if you're ever going to see them again or who's going to die. And then hugging, kissing, and the conversation between Jacob and Esau, you probably already forgot it. I'm going to paraphrase the conversation. And if you go back and read it, you'll see that everything I'm saying is basically in there. Esau says, who are all these people? He says, they're my kids. Oh, by the way, here's a gift for you. No thanks. Please take it. Oh, okay. Can I accompany you on your way? No, thanks. Well, can I give you some people to travel with you for protection? No, really, we'll be fine. Really, thank you. All right, goodbye. That's the encounter with Uncle Esau. So I want you to picture yourself as one of Jacob's kids. And after all that buildup and all that trembling and all that prayer and all that fear, you're like, huh? What just happened? What is wrong with Dad? Uncle Esau actually seems like a nice guy. What is there to be afraid of? So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to suggest that in fact this was a very dangerous encounter, and Jacob knew it. He also knew very well that his family may not have realized how dangerous it was. And he wanted them to understand how dangerous it was. The key to understanding the threat that Esau posed is to be found in the cryptic closing lines of the whole passage. Can we go back to verse 17? How quick are you on getting me verses? Because I'm going to be throwing a few of these at you. Oh, they're not numbered. Oh, okay. So the verse I'm talking about is, keep going. Keep going. Yep, keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. Yep, right there. And Jacob journeyed to Sukkot. He built himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the name of the place, he called the name of the place, he named the place Sukkot. Now, this is a strange verse. The Hebrew word Sukkot, let me explain what you're looking at here. The Hebrew word Sukkot means booths. You should be able to figure that out from the context. That's what the word means. More technically, it refers to a temporary kind of makeshift dwelling, like a lean-to or a shack, a makeshift shack. The Hebrew name for the Feast of Tabernacles is actually Sukkot. Tabernacle is a much more like religious-sounding word, but it's actually a very mundane word. It's called in the Bible. It's called the Festival of Sukkot, the Festival of Shacks, of temporary booths. That's what it's actually called. Tabernacle sounds nicer, so we use that word in English. And why is the festival called that? Because the commandment in Leviticus chapter 23 is for the people of Israel once a year for 7 days to build a little shack, a little makeshift booth, and live in it for the week. That's what we do. Everyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah, we good? Okay. But that's what the word Sukkot means. A sukkah, that's the singular. Sukkot is plural. A sukkah is a temporary shack. Now, when we look at this verse, Jacob journeyed to Sukkot, which wasn't called that yet because he hadn't named it. So he journeyed off somewhere. He built himself a house, and he built a makeshift shack for his livestock. Therefore, he named the place Makeshift Shack. That's what it says. But then, what's the very next verse after this? Then he went to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan. And he pitched his tent before the city. And then the next verse says that he bought a piece of land and he erected an altar there. Okay. So not only is it strange that he named the place where he went after the shack that he built for his livestock, even though it says he built two things. He built a home for himself, presumably for his family, and he built a makeshift shed for his possessions, and he named the place Makeshift Shed, and then he traveled on elsewhere and set up his life in the land of Israel. He wasn't even there very long. And this verse about the place called Sukkot is strange for a variety of reasons. Number one, why is he naming it Makeshift Shack? Number two, why do we care that he even went there? There's probably lots of places they briefly stopped on all kinds of journeys in all kinds of narratives in the Bible, and we don't have verses like this that stopping along the way, you stopped at this rest area or that rest area, or you spent the night in a Holiday Inn. We don't have that type of detail in biblical stories. It just says they traveled. He didn't go, and he built a house. He built a shack. What does it mean? Hold on a sec. Just going through my notes. All right. My friends, by naming the place after the flimsy makeshift huts that he made for his cattle, Jacob was sending a very powerful message to his family. Listen carefully. If I've lost your attention and you're spacing out, this is the good time to get back in. Okay? Don't worry. You didn't miss anything. The message he was sending was a direct response to the actual danger of the meeting with Esau. In the extremely polite, innocuous dialogue between the small talk between Esau and Jacob, each of them made a statement about their relationship to their material wealth. When Esau initially refused the gift, he said to Jacob, "I have a lot. I have plenty, my brother. You keep what's yours. I have plenty." And when Jacob responded and urged Esau to take the gift, he said, "I have everything." Now, what's the difference between saying I have a lot and I have everything? So it's important to note, we're talking about two very wealthy people. You look in the scripture, you see these are two wealthy men. They have no problem providing their needs of their families. When someone says, "I have everything," now, what does that mean? Jacob says, "I have everything." It doesn't mean I have everything in the world. If I say I have everything, what does it mean? It means I have everything that I need, everything that I want. All my needs are taken care of. I have everything. What it means is that my possessions are a means and not an end in and of themselves. They're a means to give me whatever I need or whatever I want. And if all of those needs are fulfilled with this means, with my possessions, then I have everything. I don't need anything else. But if someone who's wealthy and has all of his needs met doesn't say I have everything, but he says I have a lot, I have plenty, so I could always have more. Esau said, "I have plenty." All of his needs were met by his possessions, but he didn't say I have everything. I have everything I need. Those translators who said I have everything I need were not wrong. They were just adding a little commentary. Esau describes his wealth as having plenty, not having everything. If money is an end in and of itself, if I want money for the sake of having money, then there's no such thing as having everything, unless I actually have, everything in the world. If wealth is an end in and of itself, then no matter how much I have, I always want more. So when a wealthy man like Esau says, "I have a lot," he's not talking about filling his worldly needs. What he's saying is, I have a lot, but I could have more. This materialistic attitude of Esau, this attitude towards wealth, that it is a goal, it is an end in and of itself and not a means, is actually something that relates to another scene that we see with Esau. Could we pull up the scriptures? Was it Genesis 25 or 26? What did I give you before? There we go. Now, this is a different scene with Jacob and Esau from much earlier in their lives. I mentioned it earlier that Jacob acquired the birthright from Esau, the famous pot of lentils. Let's take a look at this scene. Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, "Please feed me with that red stew. I'm tired." Therefore, his name was called Edom. Fine. But Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright as of this day." Esau said, "Look, I'm about to die." Now, here the Hebrew is very interesting. The Hebrew says, literally, "Hine anochi holech lamut." Literally, "Behold, I am going to die." The Hebrew doesn't say I'm about to die. About to die means immediately. Literally, listen to the words. "Behold, I am going to die. What good is this birthright to me?" Behold, I am going to die. What good is this birthright to me? So Jacob said, "Swear to me as of this day." He swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Keep going. And Jacob, now this is a huge verse. Now, here's a rule about studying Scripture, which maybe if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say. If there are words in the Bible, details in the story, that you could delete them, and the story would not look any different to you. Sounds heretical, right? But that's the key. If you could delete a word or a whole verse or multiple verses, if you could delete something from the Bible and you'd never know the difference, those are actually the most important words in the Bible. You see, there's no extra words in the Bible. There's no extra details in the Bible. Every single word teaches me something. So like the big ones are easy. When it says in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not commit murder, no one says, well, why does that say? We know why that's there. But when it says that Jacob traveled to a place called Sukkot, and we're like, why on earth is that detail even in the story? That's where you mark the spot with an X and you dig. So look at this verse. Jacob gave Esau bread and a stew of lentils. Then he ate and drank and arose and went his way. That's a lot of stage direction that we don't usually have in the Bible. You notice when you read the Bible, it doesn't say like, he walked in, he sat down, he turned, he spoke. You see that in novels. In the Bible, you don't have that level of detail. He ate and he drank and he got up and he left. Thus, Esau despised the birthright. By eating and drinking, getting up and leaving? How does the eating and drinking and getting up and leaving mean that Esau despised the birthright? Have you heard this from me before? You haven't. This is new, right? This is the piece you guys didn't hear. So let's go back to that line where Esau said, behold, I am going to die. Now, the standard understanding of that line, behold, I'm going to die, is the way they translated it. Where everyone understands it this way, and I'm here to tell you tonight that they're wrong. I believe they're wrong. The standard understanding is that Esau was at the point of death. He was exhausted. Jacob was taking advantage of this guy, of Esau, who was like at the end of a marathon where people just collapse, that he was so exhausted, and he was so weary, and he was like, and Jacob standing over him like, you don't get the food until you give me the birthright. That's how we understand the scene. Now tell me something. If someone's really that exhausted that they feel like they're about to die, they feel like they're going to collapse, they could even euphemistically say, I'm about to die, and then, please give me the food. What happens after they eat a warm meal? What? But how do they behave right after that level of exhaustion? You eat a warm meal, you crash. But wait a second. Give me that verse again that you just had up there. Not this verse. Wait a second. Jacob gave Esau the bread and the stew of lentils. Whoa. He ate and drank and got up and left. That's how he showed his derision for the birthright. Wait a second. How tired were you, buddy? He ate and drank and got up and left. Thus, Esau despised the birthright. He wasn't on his deathbed. Because when he said, behold, I am going to die, he wasn't lying. Esau didn't say, he wasn't pretending to be falling over from exhaustion. He was making a much deeper statement. What's the birthright? This is Jacob and Esau. Their dad is Isaac. Their grandfather is Abraham. That's the family they're in. They know what the birthright is. They know about the covenant. And they know that the covenant is that there will be 400 years of enslavement in a foreign land. And then afterwards we will emerge as a great nation. And we will be charged with the mission of bringing God to all the families of the earth at some point in the distant future. And Esau says to him, dude, I'm mortal. I ain't living 400 years until we get out of Egypt. I ain't living till the end of times when all the families of the earth know God. Behold, I am going to die. What good is this birthright to me? This birthright isn't an inheritance that I'm going to see in my lifetime. Behold, I am going to die. What good is this birthright to me? That's what he was saying. Esau is a materialist. He cares about this world. Behold, I am going to die. What do I care about your birthright? What, you want the promise God made to Grandpa Abraham? That like centuries and centuries from now, long after we're both dead and gone, there's going to be some great nation that our descendants are going to become. Give me the pot of lentils. That I can enjoy. Behold, I am going to die. What good is this birthright to me? That is Esau. Esau sees wealth and materialism as a goal in and of itself. No matter how much he has, he wants more. He doesn't live this material life as a goal, as a means to a higher purpose. Now, it's true that Esau did not attack. He didn't try to kill Jacob and his family. Let's go back to the scene where they meet. My friends, those who oppose God's values do not only pose a threat to us when they're trying to kill us. Sometimes the threat that they pose to us is even greater when they hug us and kiss us. When they offer to walk with us in unity, as Esau did. That can be dangerous too. When the dominant culture of materialism, of living for the moment, that's Esau. What do I need the future for? I got my life. Right, like the culture of I'm going to get married and have kids late so I can have fun when I'm young. You know that culture? That's called, how about having fun when you're older? How about being able to play ball with your grandkids? That ain't happening if you decide to party until you're 35 before you even start thinking about getting married and first have kids. Like, you understand what I'm saying? The dominant culture of materialism, when that culture is inviting, is pleasant, when it hugs and kisses us and says, come on, we're brothers, we're at risk. Our children are at risk. Not of getting killed, but of being influenced by a set of values that's contrary to what we believe in. Jacob understood that the fact that Uncle Esau was so pleasant and so warm posed a grave threat. The threat of his kids saying, I kind of like Esau. Kind of viewing him as a role model. I mean, my dad, he's a little neurotic. He was freaking out about this guy trying to kill him. Now we meet Uncle Esau. I don't know what happened 22 years ago between them, but he seems like a great guy. I want to hang out with him. The threat of buying into Esau's materialism worried Jacob greatly. He doesn't want to travel with him. Jacob's response is clear and decisive. First, he rejects the offer to travel together. And then when they've gone their separate ways, he builds a house, a permanent dwelling for his family, and a sukkah, a temporary makeshift dwelling for his possessions. And Jacob is sending his family a message. Possessions come second, family comes first. Family is sacred, family is eternal, family is permanent. Wealth, possessions, the livestock, that's temporary. That goes in the sukkah. And to emphasize the point, to make it clear that Esau's attitude to the material possessions as the be-all and end-all is unacceptable and wrong, he names the place after the temporary makeshift dwelling that he builds for the possessions. He makes this statement to his family. The possessions go in the flimsy makeshift hut. You can't take it with you. Ladies and gentlemen, what Jacob taught his family that day is critical for us in our time. When the prevailing society promotes a set of values that glorifies the pleasures of the moment, the pot of lentils, it prioritizes physical beauty over spiritual substance. When this dominant culture says it's better to have fun for as long as you can before starting a family, we must do what Jacob did. And what did he do? You retreat. You say, we're not traveling together. You retreat and you reinforce. Retreat from the influence, whether it's TV, Hollywood, government education system, wherever you're getting those messages, and reinforce the sacred eternal values and beliefs that are embedded in the Bible. We just celebrated Hanukkah. How much time do I have, Pastor? As much as I want. Wow, that's a dangerous thing to say. You know, we just concluded celebrating Hanukkah, right? And Hanukkah is a very interesting holiday. holidays actually mentioned in the New Testament. In John chapter 10, it talks about Jesus celebrating the Feast of Dedication. That's Hanukkah. See, I don't think Jesus ever celebrated Christmas. I don't know if it's a little... Someone said to me the other day, he said, Jesus never read the New Testament. Never read it. Okay. So Hanukkah, as described in the book of Maccabees, which in some Christian Bibles they have it and some consider it Apocrypha, as described in the book of Maccabees, and that's where the whole story of the Hanukkah tale is told, it's worth reading, it commemorates a victory over the Greeks. Let me just give you a brief history of Hanukkah. You could also go into your podcast platforms and find a recent shoulder-to-shoulder episode that I did with Doug where we talked about Hanukkah. We explained the whole holiday. As described in the book of Maccabees, it's a victory over the Greeks. The Assyrian Greek authorities, this is the late Second Temple period, it's about 175 years before the birth of Jesus. The Greek authorities had seized control of the Holy Temple, and they had enacted a series of decrees, of edicts, designed to replace Judaism with Hellenistic Greek practices, Greek culture, and pagan belief. And they made laws forbidding the teaching of Torah, forbidding observance of the Sabbath, a number of decrees. I should say parenthetically that had the Maccabees lost that war, that would have been the end of faith in the God of Israel. So every Christian owes a debt of gratitude to the Maccabees who fought that battle. The battle ended in the year 167 BC, and then a little while after that, your faith is born. So the Maccabees, this Jewish rebel army, they fought bravely, they retook control of the temple, which they then rededicated to God. Thus the name dedication, which is what the word Hanukkah means. Hanukkah means dedication. So I want to raise 3 questions about Hanukkah. It's worth noting that there have been many threats and victories throughout Jewish history. Some of them are in the Bible, some of them are just a little later. Hanukkah, Jewishly, is not biblical. Our Bible ends with the prophet Malachi, a few hundred years before that. And throughout the Second Temple period, there were various threats and attacks. There were decrees on us throughout our history, struggles to overcome. But most of those events were not enshrined with the institution of a holiday, let alone an 8-day holiday. So why Hanukkah? Why did Hanukkah merit to be enshrined by the rabbinic authorities of the time as an 8-day holiday for all time? Because again, it's not a biblical feast. It's a rabbinically, human beings declared this festival. It's a rabbinic holiday. So because Hanukkah is a rabbinic holiday, rabbis instituted the festival of Hanukkah as opposed to the biblical feasts. I will do something that I usually refrain from doing when I speak to Christians, which is I'm going to quote the Talmud. Because the Talmud discusses the story of Hanukkah, and it details the rules for the observance, how you light the candles, because, us Jews, we love rules. We have rules about everything. So we have the rules about the ritual observance. And here's a quote from the Talmud about Hanukkah. Here we go. Quote, "When the Greeks entered the sanctuary, they had defiled all of the oil in the sanctuary, in the temple. And when the house of Hashmonai," that's the name of the main family of the Maccabees, they were a priestly family, "when they prevailed and defeated them, they searched and they found only 1 flask of oil that was stamped with the seal of the high priest, and it had only enough oil to light the menorah, the candelabra in the temple for 1 day. And a miracle occurred, and when they put the oil in and they lit it, it burned for 8 days." So for the coming years, they established these 8 days for prayer and thanks to the Lord. So in this telling of Hanukkah that I just shared with you, the war is not the central event that's being celebrated. The whole observance of lighting the candles and why it's 8 days long is being described in what I just said to you what's being described happened after the war was already won. After the war was won, they went into the temple, they found a flask of oil, they put it in the menorah, they lit it, and it burned for 8 days. And that's why we celebrate Hanukkah the way we do, lighting the menorah for 8 days. The war is an afterthought. It just sets the stage for the miracle that we're commemorating. That's question number one. That's a little strange. Question number two. Why? Meaning, in establishing this ritual observance, the rabbis did something very strange. You see, Hanukkah is a rare holiday that does not have any key aspect of its observance take place in the synagogue. There's no unique liturgy that is said corporately in the synagogue as part of, we have a lot of liturgy. We don't have any special prayer service for it. And this is unusual. Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, Purim, the Feast of Tabernacles, all of our holidays, they have some observance at home, but they also have communal rituals that take place in the synagogue, but not Hanukkah. The only observance of Hanukkah, the only ritual for Hanukkah is the lighting of the menorah in the home. And this is especially strange considering that if any holiday should be commemorated only in the synagogue, it should be Hanukkah. Why? The whole name of it is rededication. They rededicated the temple. The story I just told you that is the source for the whole lighting of the menorah took place in the temple. If the entire observance of Hanukkah was lighting the menorah in the synagogue, that would make more sense. That would be more like what happened, right? And yet, right, so the only ritual is lighting the candles at the home. Third question is, of all of the holidays, this is my third question, sorry. I have my three questions. Okay, let's answer all the questions now. You see, there was a military victory. So the first question was, why the military? Why are we ignoring the military victory? Right? Like it's an afterthought. We don't put holidays on our calendar to commemorate military victories. We make holidays when there's a lesson that needs to be reinforced every year into the future. And that's the purpose of a holiday. It's not just the, yay, holiday, let's remember what happened. No, the purpose of a holiday is to perpetuate an idea that we need, a lesson that we need every year. So we put it on the calendar. Had the Greeks wanted to kill us and had been unsuccessful, we would not have Hanukkah. The Greeks didn't want to kill us. They wanted to change us. And there were plenty of Jews at the time, by the way. Dirty little secret, the Hanukkah war was actually, that war with the Maccabees were fighting was actually kind of a civil war. There were Jews on both sides. Because there were plenty of Jews, in fact, the majority at the time, who liked this new Greek culture. The Greek culture was progressive, and it was advanced, and it was scientific. Sound familiar? It was the, and this ancient Israelite religion was old-fashioned and superstitious, and there were plenty of Jews who went along with it, as there are today. They wanted to change us. They wanted to replace Jewish life with Greek pagan culture. Advanced Greek culture. The culture of the body over the life of the spirit. Of pleasure over meaning. Of a belief in the human mind, not God. The people of Israel had many enemies before the Greeks. Amalek, Haman, Pharaoh, but none of those enemies looked attractive to the Jewish people. The Jews weren't trying to become like the Persians in the book of Esther. They weren't assimilating. The Jews weren't trying to become like the Egyptians. The threats that those enemies posed to the Jewish people, to the people of Israel, were the threats of death to the body. But Greece posed a threat to the soul. Because Greek culture seemed so advanced, so sophisticated, and so enjoyable. That's what made it so dangerous. And this is what the rabbis mean when they said that the Greeks had entered into the sanctuary and defiled all the oil. That miracle was a metaphor for the war itself. They had penetrated with their impure ways and beliefs into the inner world, into the sanctuary of Jewish life. The people of Israel, who are called by God a kingdom of priests, was invaded by the profane and crass materialism of the Greeks. There was only a small flask of purity remaining. Only a small group of Jews, the Maccabees, who led this rebellion. This small group of pure oil should not have lasted, but it did. It restored purity to the temple, and spiritual life triumphed over the hedonistic culture of the Greeks. You see how the miracle is actually sort of telling the story? This is the meaning behind that miracle. And when the miracle happened, when the miracle of the oil happened, the Jews who witnessed it understood what they had been fighting for. They understood also that the battle was not really over. They understood that this battle would be fought for many generations. And they also understood that the battle to overcome this Greek hedonistic, pleasure-seeking, pagan culture is fought and won in the home. Consider the following passage from Book 5 of Plato's Republic, arguably the greatest work of Greek philosophy. Quote, this is a quote from Plato. "The law, I said, is to the following effect, that the wives of our guardians are to be common, and their children are to be common, and no parent is to know his own child, nor any child his parent." I think there's some school boards in this country that have that philosophy. Wives are to be common and shared. No parent to know his own child, nor child his parent, because kids belong to the state. Contrast that with honor thy father and mother of Exodus 20, the fifth commandment. Or in Deuteronomy 6, you shall teach these words to your children and speak of them when you sit in your home. Let's make no mistake about it. The battle for the definition of marriage, definition of family, for control over the education of our children is as current now as it was in the time of Socrates or in the time of the Maccabees. And it's not easy living in Greece, is it? We've come to know what it's like when a hedonistic, dominant culture that looks so nice and inviting is so appealing to our children and threatens their values. The rabbis who created Hanukkah understood what Jacob understood when his family met a pleasant, welcoming, pretty cool Uncle Esau. The rabbis understood that when a dominant materialistic culture that is hostile to our values looks polite, sophisticated, and enjoyable and embraces us, that is when it is most dangerous. They understood that unlike an enemy who seeks to kill, this threat reaches the innermost sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, the hearts and minds of our children. And the rabbis who declared Hanukkah understood that a response to such a threat is to create more light at home. We need to light up our homes, folks. When the Hellenists are controlling the world outside, we need to find that flask of pure oil, and we need to light up our families. That's what Hanukkah is about, by the way. That's what this season is about. You notice this season is in terms of daylight, it's the darkest time of year. So we light lights. We light them at home. We reinforce the message. As I said before, we retreat and reinforce. There's a time for that. And I think we're in that time now. So that's the message I wanted to share with you tonight. That's the message of this encounter that Jacob has with Esau, of how he reacts to it, of the message he sends his children, reminding them what possessions are really for and what really matters most. So let's make sure, I think one simple way to do this is to talk about God. And I don't mean having long theological discussions. No one remembers those anyway. I'm talking about just having God on our lips. It's a very simple thing we can all do. Someone asks you how you're doing, say, thank God. You finish paying for something, God bless you. Talk about God. Have your kids see that you're talking about, that God is just on your lips. That you're mentioning God. He's more of a presence in your day-to-day activities. That's a simple thing that we can do. Just to reinforce, what it really means to live in his presence. It happens at home. And there's another interesting thing about the lighting of the menorah. I don't know if you've ever seen a home with a menorah lit. The menorah is supposed to be lit at home, visible to the street. It's very interesting. You're supposed to light it at home, but you don't just light it on the kitchen table. So people put it in their front window. In Israel, the practice is that we actually put it outside the front door, and they have these little boxes that we put them in with glass. So it's supposed to be lit at home, but visible to the street. That's the model. We bring the light of faith and develop the light of faith and grow the light of faith in our homes, but in such a way that it illuminates the outside world. That the light shines from our homes into the world around us. That's the message of this time of year. And it's a message at this season of history that we're in. It's really what we need. So God bless you. Thank you for listening. And I hope we can stay in touch. I really do. I hope that we can have a relationship as, again, if you ever need a rabbi, I don't know why you would need a rabbi, but if you ever just want to be in touch, you have a question, you want to talk, just reach out to me. I would like nothing more than this to, like I said, be the beginning of our relationship. I'll hand it back to you, Pastor.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Incredible. I don't know about you, but that's the second time I've heard that teaching, and I got more out of it this time than I did before. Rabbi Pesach has written a book. It's called Cup of Salvation. It's a powerful journey through King David's Psalms of Praise. He gave me a personalized copy a few years ago, and it's an incredible book. They are $15 a piece. I have 10 of them. Is that what I got? You gave me 10? Unfortunately, we can only take cash tonight. So if you'd like to buy one tonight, we can. I would love to sell all of these before the end of the night. If you'd like one, come and see my wife, and you can give her cash, and we will take that for you. If you want to go on Amazon, you can, but I wasn't going to tell them that because it's going to cost them more, and Amazon's the great ripoff of them. No, it's not. It really is. It's the modern day Walmart. I actually love Walmart. Just a reminder too, if you'd like to stay in contact with the CJCUC, specifically Rabbi, you can pick one of these up. I want to share something that, if you don't mind, if we can get a little awkward a little bit. We love getting awkward with one another. We literally, our relationship has been birthed out of awkwardness. What do I do with this? What do I do with the fact that we believe differently? How do we do this? How about we just live in it? How about we just live in it? And I'll never forget. I've told this story quite often. I just want to honor you because you truly have challenged us. You've challenged me. You've challenged us to go deeper into the Word of God and to study. I do want to correct you in some of your heresy, though, tonight. Our faith was born when she gave birth. to Jesus, the Mashiach. Did I say that right? All right. And Bishop Stearns likes to stir the pot sometimes when we're all together, and he likes to say, someday, one day, we will all be sitting around a table, and CNN and Fox will be there, and the Messiah will be there, and and they will all ask him, is this your first or your second time here? And he will say, yes. I find it very interesting, and as for us as Christians, to hear this word and to just reinforce. Jesus said that we would be salt and we would be light. He was the light of the world, but we were to be salt and light in this world. And it's encouraging to me now, even though there is a mystery and how these two relationships work together. I know this, and you've said it so eloquently to us before while we were in Israel. What separates us is so far less than what we have in common. And so we cling to and live in what we have in common. And I know we rib each other a lot and we joke about that, but that's part of our beautiful relationship. And I just want you to hear, I want you to hear this tonight. The Word of God instructs us to honor Israel and to bless Israel. And as a member of Israel herself here in our incredible country, Rabbi, we bless you. We bless your incredible nation. And we're humbled to have you here in this country. And we're so thankful that you have reminded us again who we are supposed to be, the salt and the light, in a very dark, dark time. Would you bow your heads with me as we close? Father, we just love you, and we understand that the battle for our homes is on. And we thank you for Rabbi, and we bless him. We bless him, and we bless the great nation of Israel. And we thank you for your people. Father, we thank you for your people. We bless them. But Lord, I thank you that through this great nation, you have sent us a man who has just reminded us again of what is most important, and what you have taught us in your word tonight. We will take home and we will reinforce with our children and remind them that the reason even that we celebrate Christmas was to reinforce that Christ had come to the world, and that we want to perpetuate that he will return again, and to be light, and to be light, and to be light and love until he does. We contend, Father, until he comes again. And all God's people said, amen and amen. Rabbi, one more time, we want to just thank you. Can you give Rabbi a huge thank you? Bless him.